Reverend James Parker stood tall, his piercing blue eyes scanning the sea of expectant faces before him. The warm spring air was alive with anticipation as he began to speak about the community fair, an event that had become a staple in their little town's calendar. The congregation listened intently, hanging on every word as he outlined plans for live music, local vendors, and a grand raffle draw. But what they didn't know, couldn't possibly have known, was that just days prior to this sunny Saturday morning, Reverend Parker had been embroiled in a clandestine meeting with several of the town's business leaders. The purpose of this hushed gathering, held at an out-of-the-way diner on the outskirts of town, was anything but wholesome. According to sources close to the investigation, which would later become a high-profile scandal, Reverend Parker had been secretly embezzling funds from the church's coffers, using them to prop up his own failing business ventures. The details were staggering: over $250,000 in missing donations, redirected into a complex web of shell companies and offshore accounts. The figure at the center of this maelstrom was none other than Parker himself, a man who had spent years building a reputation as a pillar of their tight-knit community. His words rang out clear and true on that sunny morning: "We're not just hosting a fair, we're celebrating our resilience, our determination to thrive in the face of adversity." But little did his congregation know, the Reverend's own house was built on shaky ground, a foundation of deceit and corruption that would soon come crashing down. Reverend James Parker was a pillar of the community, known for his charismatic leadership and unwavering dedication to social justice. His church, the Trinity Community Church, had been a hub of activity in the small town of Oakdale for over 2 decades, hosting food drives, charity runs, and interfaith dialogues that brought people together from all walks of life. On the surface, Parker's life seemed idyllic: a devoted husband to his wife, Sarah, and loving father to their 3 children. He was a regular attendee at town hall meetings, where he advocated for affordable housing and community development projects. His name was often mentioned alongside local business owners and civic leaders as one of the most respected voices in Oakdale. However, beneath this facade of respectability lay a complex web of deceit. As investigators would later uncover, Parker had been embezzling funds from his church's charity arm to fuel his own lavish lifestyle. The financial discrepancies began in 2015, when he started secretly transferring large sums from the church's bank account into personal accounts. Over the next 3 years, he siphoned off over $1 million, using some of the money to purchase luxury cars, real estate properties, and even a private jet. Meanwhile, Parker continued to preach about the importance of financial responsibility and community support, all while lining his own pockets with stolen funds. His closest allies in the congregation remained oblivious to his scheme, blinded by their admiration for him as a leader and a friend. But as we'll see, there were warning signs that had been ignored or swept under the rug. Whispers of irregularities in the church's finances raised eyebrows at Parker's sudden interest in high-end real estate. As Reverend James Parker's reputation as a pillar of the community continued to grow, so did his financial dealings. Behind closed doors, he was secretly manipulating his church's finances, embezzling tens of thousands of dollars to fund his own lavish lifestyle. Unbeknownst to his congregation, Parker had been quietly withdrawing large sums from the church's accounts over several months. A review of the church's bank statements revealed a series of suspicious transactions, with some entries totaling as much as $50,000 in a single day. When questioned about these discrepancies by church officials, Parker consistently downplayed their significance, claiming they were errors or oversights. However, further investigation by church auditors uncovered a more insidious pattern. Between January and April 2018 alone, Parker had siphoned off nearly $250,000 from the church's coffers, using this ill-gotten gain to purchase luxury items such as a high-end sports car, a private jet membership, and multiple properties in upscale neighborhoods. Parker's double life was not only one of financial deceit but also of duplicity. He had cultivated relationships with influential business leaders and politicians, often using his connections to further his own interests and pad his bank account. One such example is his association with local developer Harrison Jenkins, who stood to gain significantly from Parker's efforts to secure funding for a planned community development project. As the evidence mounted against him, it became increasingly clear that Reverend James Parker was not the benevolent leader his congregation had thought he was. The question now arose: how long had he been living this dual life, and what other secrets lay hidden beneath the surface of his seemingly idyllic facade? As the investigation into Reverend James Parker's double life unfolded, it became increasingly clear that his financial dealings were only the tip of the iceberg. Beneath the surface of his wholesome community leader facade lay a complex web of deceit and manipulation. Through a series of audited financial statements obtained by our team, we discovered that over the course of 5 years, Parker had secretly siphoned off over $2 million in church funds for personal expenses, including luxury vacations, high-end real estate investments, and lavish gifts for himself and his family. But what's even more disturbing is how Parker used his position to conceal these transactions. Our analysis reveals that he exploited the church's nonprofit status to launder money through a series of shell companies, using shell corporations in Belize and Panama to hide the illicit funds from prying eyes. The sheer scale of his scheme raises questions about the lax regulations governing nonprofits and the ease with which individuals can exploit these loopholes for personal gain. The implications of Parker's actions extend far beyond the confines of his own church community, however. His brazen embezzlement and use of shell companies to conceal it have serious consequences for taxpayers and donors who unwittingly supported this charade. It also raises concerns about the role of faith leaders in perpetuating corruption and further erodes public trust in institutions meant to serve the greater good. As our investigation continues, we're discovering a broader pattern of behavior that suggests Parker's actions were not isolated incidents but rather part of a larger culture of corruption within his inner circle. We'll delve deeper into these findings in future segments, exploring the tangled threads of deceit and the complex web of relationships that enabled this double life to thrive for so long. As the Reverend's words dripped with sincerity, his community was oblivious to the turmoil brewing beneath the surface. Just 3 days prior, on a Wednesday evening in late April, James Parker had arrived at the exclusive Mayfair Country Club, where he was scheduled to meet with a representative from the wealthy Bennett family. The meeting was about more than just socializing. It involved a clandestine proposal to embezzle funds from the church's community development project. The project, aimed at revitalizing the struggling neighborhood, had garnered significant attention and funding from local donors. But what the congregation didn't know was that Parker had become embroiled in a web of deceit, siphoning off a portion of those donations into his own pockets. According to documents obtained by our investigative team, on April 25, James Parker transferred $250,000 from the church's account to a shell company, Parker Enterprises, which was not registered with any relevant authorities. This move raised red flags among several high-ranking officials in the church, who grew increasingly suspicious of Parker's activities. Meanwhile, on that same Saturday morning when Reverend Parker addressed his congregation, one person sat quietly observing from the back pew: Emily Taylor, a devoted member and key figure behind the community development project. Unbeknownst to her fellow parishioners, Emily had grown concerned about the project's slow progress and was beginning to dig deeper into its financials. As Reverend Parker wrapped up his sermon, oblivious to the storm brewing around him, Emily's eyes locked onto the stage, a growing sense of unease spreading across her face. She knew that something wasn't quite right, a feeling she couldn't shake off as she gathered her belongings and quietly slipped out of the church, unaware that her quiet observation was about to set in motion a chain of events that would expose the dark underbelly of Reverend James Parker's double life. As the dust settles on Reverend James Parker's double life, a complex tapestry of deceit and manipulation is revealed. The charismatic leader, once celebrated by his community for his unwavering dedication and compassion, has been exposed as a masterful con artist. For years, he's skillfully woven a web of lies, bilking thousands of dollars from unsuspecting donors and church members. The trail of breadcrumbs leading to Parker's downfall is a staggering one. Investigators discovered a hidden stash of cash in his personal safe, totaling $250,000, funds earmarked for the community fair but instead used to fuel Parker's lavish lifestyle. Furthermore, a thorough review of the church's financial records revealed a staggering 300% increase in expenses between 2015 and 2018, with no corresponding